We're live. Of course, if I turn the microphone on, it'll be better.
Oh, okay.
Good morning. Only person slower than the preacher to sit down. Y'all see what I have to put up with? Try to feel sorry for me. All right. We're gonna look at Leviticus chapter 16. Looking at the Day of Atonement, and it's hard. There's so much, as you notice, so many passages of Scripture, both Leviticus and Numbers, go into great detail about the Day of Atonement in different ways, so that you kind of have to add it all together to see exactly what all is going on. If anything, it ought to make us even more aware of how complicated the idea of atonement for our sins is, and how as the Hebrew writer talks about, how overly simplified things. Don't you like things that are simplified? People give you an arm-long list of rules and regulations, and then somebody comes along and says, "Oh, okay," or you can just do this. And in essence, that is a lot of what Jesus did. He simplified all of this. And because we don't live under the law of Moses, we don't see the every single day, the several times a year, additional sacrifices and things that go on to appreciate how it all boils down to just that once for all sacrifice of Jesus. All right, just pick up there in Leviticus 16. Again, the reminder, this happens, the Lord comes to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron. So, not a wonderful time. Not only has Aaron and the people sinned multiple times in the years leading up to this. Was there any complaining during the 10 plagues in Egypt by the people? They complain. They of all people shouldn't. You can understand the Egyptians complaining all the time, but the Israelites are constantly complaining to Moses about what's going on. And the first thing happens is that they get given harder labor. They no longer have to just make bricks. They've got to go gather their own filler for it, the straw. And you ever know people that the best thing they do is complain? Honestly, we're looking beginning in Leviticus 16, and honestly, the number of complaints is just incredible. Of course, by Leviticus 16, Moses is going to be told some details about the Day of Atonement. And verse 2 there, the Lord says to Moses, "Tell your brother Aaron that he cannot enter into the most holy place through the veil before the mercy seat. Now we talk about the holy place out front and the most holy place, but you notice that God just sometimes just uses the same term for them. It is an interesting thought, isn't it? Is something more holy than something else? We like to make comparisons of things, and when it comes to sin, we know what the really bad sins are, and the little white lies and little white sins that are okay for us to do. But God doesn't see it that way. A place is either holy because of who is present there, or it's unholy. And it's funny, we talk about, we argue a lot of times, are we going to church Sunday morning? Oh, no, we're the church. If the church is assembling together, isn't that a holy place? Whether it's out under a tree or in a tent or in a building or wherever, that place becomes holy, set apart for a specific use. If we're using it for God's people. Now, can the same building be holy at times and unholy at other times? Sure. Technically, when the county comes in to conduct a vote, is that a holy assembly? No, not the same thing at all. Is there anything wrong with using the building? And this is a funny one. You get people that building is holy. It can never be used for anything else. What makes this building holy? God's people. Holy people. And when holy people assemble, when God's people assemble, regardless of where we do it, if we all get together, commercial time, at Michelle's house in a couple of weeks, is that a holy house? Should be, shouldn't it? Oh, Christians, when they're partying, they're not holy then. When are we called to be holy? All the time. So if we really are God's people, then anytime we get together, then that becomes a holy place. So notice that God understands all that, and He uses the term. Some of the translations, a few of the translations, will actually use the term in verse 2. At that time, when He, this place where the veil and the mercy seat are, and the Ark of the Covenant, is the most holy or the holiest place. But God doesn't use a comparative there. He said it's the holy place. So holy place, more holy in one sense, inside. By the way, you notice the term there, He goes through the veil. Now what do you think of as a veil? Yeah, a little thin piece, maybe gauze or something, probably see through it. It's not going to be very thick, certainly. We don't know, of course, what that veil in the tabernacle was like. But we do know, we do have descriptions of in the temple where Jesus went and worshiped, where everyone in the New Testament visited. That veil between the holy place and the most holy place was a big, thick thing. There was essentially a little maze that the high priest, it was never left open to where that everybody could see into the most holy place. Of course, by the New Testament times, there's nothing in there. The Ark of the Covenant had been lost in Babylonian destruction of the temple, but still, the high priest was to go into the most holy place once a year with that sin offering for the people, and was still doing that in Jesus' day. And that That veil is not just one little thin piece. Do you remember something that happened to that veil in the New Testament that's mentioned?
It was split from the top to the bottom.
Okay. Sometime between the death and the resurrection of Jesus, and by the way, the Greek makes it a little uncertain. Was it actually at his resurrection that it happened? Don't know. Or was it at his death? But that veil was split. Now imagine, it's not just one little piece of material hanging there. It's this huge thing with a maze, 2 or 3 foot long maze that the high priest would walk through in there between curtains in order to get into the most holy place. And the whole thing splits. There are elaborate instructions for the priests and how often that was to be replaced and how it was to be handled. So that, picture this. You're one of the priests charged with hanging the new veil, but you can't look at the holy place, the most holy place. So how do you hang that thing? How do you hang it? Go home and try that this afternoon. Try hanging a curtain without being able to see. I don't know. Don't know how they did it, but somehow they had things arranged to where the hanging of that curtain, the replacement of that, and it had to be replaced occasionally. But now suddenly it would normally be replaced on a schedule so that nothing like that ever happened. But now suddenly, with the resurrection of Jesus, it's torn. And whoa, now what do we do? That's an emergency replacement, getting the priests together and another veil and everything hung in there. So sometimes God plays little tricks on people to get their attention. Not really a trick, more of a object lesson, really, to get their attention. Yeah?
When it was torn from top to bottom, they had to replace it.
Had to be completely replaced. It could not be used. According to Jewish tradition, it could not be. You don't just sew it up.
No, I mean, it was removed. Yeah, it was removed, wasn't it?
No. It remained in there. The temple remained there until AD 70 when it was destroyed.
No,
And they replaced it.
Not the temple itself, the veil.
Right. That veil would have been replaced
In the New Testament.
in the New Testament after it was torn. That's an unexplainable thing. I mean, how did that happen? It's a perfectly brand new veil in there, and now it's torn. Why wouldn't they replace it? Did they believe in Jesus?
They believed in Jesus, but that was the veil that separated.
Between God and the people.
I thought it was like symbolic too.
It's symbolic. It is torn. It disappears. But is there anything in Scripture that says, okay, and God zapped with a big lightning bolt every time the priest came in to replace it?
I got to study some more.
Okay? The physical veil remained and was replaced and stayed in the temple until the temple was destroyed. You suppose there's a little bit of a sign from God there that, hey, I just showed you what I did with the resurrection of Jesus, and now you people have replaced it. I'm going to fix it where you can't replace it. Hadn't that been what Jesus has been prophesying for some years? That temple was going to be torn down and replaced with what? Him. His church. Okay, so understand that what's happening is something that is completely contrary to everything. Why would the high priest, who do not believe in Jesus, they're Sadducees, why would the priesthood allow that veil to continue to be torn? They're going to try to fix it up. Did they miss the point? Oh yeah, big time. And in a very real sense, you picture God, I can picture God just kind of shaking his head, says, you guys completely missed the point. And I'm going to show you. And 40 years later, he completely destroys that entire temple. He says, let me show you. You're not going to fix it this time. And if you ever visit Jerusalem today, you'll notice it still hasn't been fixed. Nearly 2,000 years later. And there exists no temple in Jerusalem. So, wow. Kind of like a reminder from God, let me show you what I mean. So that veil, the holy place inside the veil, before the mercy seat, which is on the ark, and we talked a little bit last week, mercy seat, no idea. Is that just a reference to the place there between the two cherubim? No idea what it looked like. I've seen the photographs, but Mike?
Looking at some information, 1 Kings 6:19 through 20, and the oracle, which is the inner part, he prepared in the house within to set there the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And the oracle in the forepart was 20 cubits in length, 20 cubits in breadth, and 20 cubits in height. Therefore he overlaid it with pure gold, and so covered the altar, which was of cedar. And later on, it's explained that the veil itself would have had to have been at least 30 feet high, so nobody could see into it.
That's right.
And it says 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 30 feet high. Man, that's a big curtain.
This is one big curtain.
I don't even think vaudeville had curtains that big.
No, not many theaters have anything like that, and especially with the thickness of it.
Right. And
For
then
a
it
path
says-
through there.
Yeah, and then it's, it says torn twain in two, whatever, from top to bottom.
Yes.
So, to me, I read that as no man could have done that. Even
Exactly.
with the longest, sharpest, hottest blade, and 30 feet, you really had to climb to get up there to cut it. And it was very symbolic of, I'm done with this. I'm done with your worship. I'm done with you doing what I didn't tell you to do.
I've replaced all of this.
Yeah.
This is no longer needed. This is the old version.
It's like when you said it is finished.
And what's hilarious is how often do people just not understand that? I mean, the old car goes out and, why, I can put a new starter in it and get another 100 miles out of it. No, it needs to be replaced, And this is very much the human attitude towards the temple. Oh, we'll fix that. But these are humans that are not interested. And again, remember that one. The high priest and most of the higher level priesthood are Sadducees. What do the Sadducees believe?
No resurrection.
No resurrection.
You're dead, you're dead.
When you're dead all over, just like Rover. And what's more, they only accepted as scripture, as inspired, the first 5 books, the books of Moses. They didn't listen to the prophets. They didn't believe that the prophets needed to be listened to as sacred writings. If they had, they would have realized how many prophecies there were of Christ coming. Anybody read the book of Daniel? Oh, all those kingdoms and the details of it, and when would come the end of the last of those great kingdoms, and how it would end and what it would be replaced with. So this is something that is absolutely incredible to see. How big was it? There are dimensions and all given for the tabernacle, but it was nowhere near the size of the temple. And by the way, if you think the curtain was expensive, understand that all this is lined with gold. What does it cost to take all the gold and line the walls? The expense of this building would have, boy, that's the national debt right there, and then some. It would have been hugely expensive as a building. Solomon originally built it. Solomon's temple lasts until the time of Daniel, and the Babylonians destroy it. Okay, whose temple replaces Solomon's? Time of Nehemiah. Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel's temple, and that one keeps getting added on to and fixed up. It was apparent. In fact, Nehemiah makes the comment that some of the people that saw it that still remembered, some of the old folks that still remembered the old original temple, wept when they saw it. This is a sad, pathetic replacement for what we've lost. And why did they lose it? Boy, there's another one of those lessons, huh? Because of sin. What they had lost because of sin is just almost irreplaceable, isn't it? That probably makes a pretty good lesson just by itself. In the years before Jesus was born, Herod the Great had determined that he was going to really make the people like him. You remember, I already warned you, nobody liked Herod the Great. The king of the Jews. No flakier king has ever ruled. And I told you the story that when he is about to die, remember, Jesus' family has taken him to Egypt to escape Herod the Great, and they learn that Herod has died. When he dies, when he gets sick and is about to die, he gives orders to bring in all the Jewish elders from all the Jewish cities in Judea and put them in prison. And he gives his soldiers express orders to kill them all as soon as they learn of Herod's death. Why? Herod just had one simple reason. He says, when I die, everyone in Judea will mourn. He knew they weren't going to mourn for him. Nobody was going to be sorry to see him go. But he said, they will. They'll be weeping. They'll mourn when I die. His soldiers defied the order. When they found out that Herod was dead, they released the Jewish elders and they all went back to their cities. And how many people do you suppose mourned in the land that Herod was dead? Not even his own family. All they could think about was, hey, what are we going to inherit? So Herod had rebuilt the temple, and it continued building almost until the time it was destroyed by the Romans in AD 70. There was work going on. Jesus makes the comment in the Gospels as he's talking with the disciples about the destruction of the temple. And one of the apostles points out, look at these big stones. That's recorded in the Gospels. I'll leave that one for you to look up. Look at these great stones. Okay, look at this wall here. From the floor to the ceiling and the length of it, that's not as big as some of the biggest foundation stones in the temple. Impressive, because that thing would have been at least as wide as it is tall. How did they get those out of the quarry and move them all the way up there across town and up the mountains? Good engineering. They knew what they were doing. By the way, I'll give you a hint on it because they found some in the quarries. They left them as rounds, as cylinders, so they could be rolled into place. They cut off the top of it and rolled it into place to where it was, the flat of the bottom was in place, and then they trimmed everything else. Or as secondary stones, had to trim everything before they rolled it into place, that final roll into place. Oh, I know nobody is ever impressed at that. Says, yeah, I know what that'd look like. Go ahead, try it sometime. Do you realize that not a one of those stones leaves you room when they were finished for a piece of paper to go in between them? How did they do those times? Yes, in 2,000 years of wind and sand and rain and all, freezing weather has chipped them out, and there's all kinds of little holes in, but they were absolutely flush. And in places where they haven't weathered, on the inside you can actually see. There's not room for a piece of paper between. Wow. Okay, I'll tell you the secret. It was aliens. Just amazing. Just amazing. The technology, the detail. And why did they put that much effort into it? Herod the Great wanted this place to be impressive because he knew that the Jewish people worshiped God, and if he made the house of God that beautiful and that impressive, then certainly they would honor him. Didn't work. They still despised him. Back to Aaron. Aaron enters the holy place, verse 3, with a bull for a sin offering, a ram for a burnt offering. He puts on a holy linen tunic, linen undergarments next to his body. Shall be girded with the linen sash, attired with his linen turban. They're holy garments. And by the way, both Numbers and Leviticus give more details on exactly what all those garments and his breastplate and everything look like. The 12 stones that represent, precious stones that represent the 12 tribes. So God gives them details of how all this is to be made. Verse 5, he takes from the congregation the sons of Israel 2 male goats for a sin offering, 1 ram for a burnt offering. Aaron offers the bull for the sin offering, which is for himself. So he first makes atonement for himself and for his household. He then takes the 2 goats, presents them before the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting. He casts lots for the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord, the other lot for the scapegoat, who is then offers the goat on which the lot for the Lord fell, becomes a sin offering. The goat on which the lot for the scapegoat fell should be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement upon it. So the high priest will place his hands on it. Some of the blood from the other goat there as a symbol. This is the sins of all the people. And he's sent off into the wilderness, the scapegoat. It doesn't stop there. Verse 11, offers the bull of the sin offering for himself, makes atonement for himself, slaughters the bull of the sin offering for himself, takes a fire pan full of coals of fire from the altar before the Lord, 2 hands full of finely ground sweet incense. This goes inside the veil. He shall put the incense on the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat. That is the Ark of the Testimony. By the way, the Ark of the Testimony, the Ark of the Covenant, all the same thing. What's a covenant?
It's an agreement.
An agreement. It's an agreement. What's a testimony? The telling of the agreement. So the two terms get used back and forth. What's the difference between a contract and what the contract says? None. They're the same thing. They're just kind of semi-technical terms about it. And by the way, you understand in law, when you go to buy a car or a house or anything else, you read the contract and it says you will make the payments, and then you sign your name at the bottom and you say, I don't have to do all that. That's just a piece of paper, right? Never works like that, does it? That is the agreement, and the Ark of the Covenant represented not only what God had told them, but what they had agreed to. Verse 14, he takes some of the blood of the bull and sprinkles it with a finger on the mercy seat on the east side. Also in front of the mercy seat, sprinkles some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Okay. Another one of those little tidbits. Josephus, writer in the New Testament era, was a priest, actually had served in the temple as a priest. He writes toward the end of the 1st century, after the destruction of the temple and everything. He's writing kind of a defense of the Jewish people. They got a big black eye, a really bad name to the Romans because of their rebellion, and the Roman army had to go and straighten them out. So Josephus is writing a defense of the Jewish people to help the Romans understand who they were and why they were God's chosen people. And he also puts in there, said, but because of their rebellion against God, the temple was destroyed and all these bad things befell them. Wow, can you say that? Anybody read the Old Testament? How many times does that happen to God's people? They rebel against him, and God is constantly allowing such things to happen to them. But as Josephus writes, he writes a lot of details about the different things. And here's one little interesting tidbit that when you think about it, they've been using the most holy place. They've been taking blood and sprinkling it in the most holy place every year, once a year, for by the time that Jesus dies on the cross, some 40 plus years. That's since it was last refurbished. It's been going on in that same room since at least the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. You sprinkle blood in there. This is a climate a little bit like this. Kind of halfway between here and Arizona. Hotter in the summer, a little drier, but some nice cold weather. In case you haven't read the weather report for what's coming in the next week or so. Brr. What does the most holy place smell like? What does the rest of the entire building after 300 plus years smell like? Do you suppose they could smell it clear across Jerusalem? When the wind blows just right, that place is going to stink like crazy. So how did they avoid that? Josephus says that a group of priests was blindfolded, let down from the roof in the most holy place with scrub brushes, and they scrubbed the most holy place. They were blindfolded so they could never see it, but they had to wash it down every year. So it didn't stink. I don't know what the detergent they used was, but you think about it.
Did the incense not help?
Yeah, I don't know what helped. But you get the picture there. There are so many realities of things. Well, was that approved by God? Do you realize what the place without something like that would have been like? How long can the high priest hold his breath? Probably not long enough to go in and do what had to be done. Just not going to happen. Sometimes there are things, and okay, let's make a practical application. God tells us to sing. Does he tell us how we learn the songs? Does he tell us anything about how we all sing the same words to the song? There's not a thing in God's Word about all. Now, there is a reminder from the time of the Judges. Maybe we just all sing our own favorite song. Try that this morning. Mike's song leader. So we'll all sing a different song, different tune.
Please don't.
Every man does what's right in their own eyes. Didn't work very well, did it? Didn't work very well in singing either. Does God leave us some room to make some intelligent decisions about singing from a piece of paper when we learn a new song? Do we learn those songs? Are there some songs that you can sing without looking? Some of them. By the way, got to tell you this one. Deacon in the congregation, song leader, one of the song leaders in the congregation, big congregation in Amarillo, Texas, many years ago. His comment was, y'all have been singing these songs all your lives. You ought to know at least the first verse by now, and he would never announce the invitation song. Never. Didn't put it on the board or anything else. Says, you guys should know the first verse of every invitation song. And he'd get up and start it, and that was okay. Now that everybody jump in and sing. And then you could frantically look it up in case he led some of the other verses that you weren't familiar with. Interesting thought. Do you suppose we could possibly learn the first verse of a song and be able to sing it? Sure. Not a problem. I mean, how many songs can we sing without ever looking at them? Oh, at camp, it's okay, but don't do that in church. You got to have a songbook. Where did the songbook come from? It was not delivered by an angel from heaven. Singing ought to be what we do with our hearts. Now that we've put the plug in that Mike told me to put in for the song leader, to follow him and do good singing this morning, we'll keep going. Leviticus. Let's jump ahead. And by the way, there's a lot of details in Leviticus 16 to go there. But let's jump over to Numbers 29. We always think about the Day of Atonement as one day, one sacrifice, and wow, that must have been a really spectacular goat to carry. Well, it took 2 goats, but it also took the bull for the sins of the priest and his people and all. So what was the real cost of sin? Even on the Day of Atonement. Numbers 29 begins in the 7th month, first day of the month. What begins the 7th day? 7th month, first day of the month. What's that? Feast. That's the feast of Ed, playing the trumpet, and everybody else. That's the beginning, the Feast of Trumpets. They begin the first day of the month, the Holy Convocation, no laborious work, be a day for blowing of trumpets. Isn't it a shame we don't have one of those? Wouldn't that be fun? Everybody toot your horn. And yes, it does sound just like you would imagine. You offer a burnt offering as a soothing aroma to the Lord, 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, 1-year-old without defect. Also the grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs. Offer 1 male goat for a sin offering. Wait a minute, we haven't even gotten to the Day of Atonement. And we got to make a sin offering. Just for New Year's. 1 male goat for a sin offering to make atonement for you. Besides the burnt offering of the new moon, references elsewhere, details, more offerings. Once a month, there was another offering that included a sin offering. So on this day, you make the offering for sin and the offering for the new moon. Its grain offering, continual burnt offering, and its grain offering, the drink offerings, according to the ordinance, an offering by fire to the Lord. And this is just the first day for the trumpets. You got to wait until the 10th day, verse 7. The 10th day of the 7th month, then is another holy gathering. You shall humble yourselves, you shall not do any work, present a burnt offering to the Lord as a soothing aroma. 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, 1-year-old, having them without defect. Their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil. The male goat for a sin offering, verse 11. Besides the sin offering of atonement and the continual burnt offering. So every one of these 7 days after the first day and its offerings for sin offering has a daily offering for sin. Are you adding up all the animals here? I mean, this is not fingers and toes. This is get your calculator out. Okay. 10th day of the month, that holy convocation. Now look at Numbers 29, verse 12. Then on the 15th day, another holy convocation. No work. Observe a feast to the Lord for 7 days. Now watch the instructions for the 7 days of that feast. You present a burnt offering, an offering by fire, verse 13, as a soothing aroma to the Lord. 13 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, 1-year-old, which are without defect. And their grain offering, the fine flour mixed with oil, gives the amounts for it. Verse 16, 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, and its grain offering, and its drink offering. Keep those calculators going. Notice verse 17. Then on the second day, $12 bulls, 2 rams, 4, do it all again. Verse 20, we're running out of time. We got to quit. Verse 20, on the third day, do it all again. They decreased the number of bulls by 1. On the fourth day, verse 23, do it all again. Verse 26, on the fifth day, do it all again. On the sixth day, 8 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, do it all again. Verse 32, on the seventh day, 7 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male. Verse 35, on the eighth day, a solemn assembly, no work, you present a burnt offering. 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, the grain offering, besides the regular burnt offering. And he concludes in verse 29, you present these to the Lord at the appointed times, besides all of your other offerings. And that's not even counting the free will offerings. For your burnt offerings, your grain offerings, your drink offerings, for your peace offerings. Okay, get your calculator going and tell me how many animals have been sacrificed at the start of this. We're only halfway through the month. And there's still a regular daily offering every single day being made that includes a sin offering. Do you begin to see what the writer of Hebrews is saying when he says, oh, and Christ offered himself once, one time for all. His blood replaces all of that in just half a month. That's not counting the other 11 months of the year that have the same thing going on every single day, every single week. You know, at some point, when we begin to see what's being talked about, and the Hebrew writer said, we need to look at the sacrifice of Jesus and say, wow. When you see that commercial on TV that talks about that super detergent that's more cleansing and gets your whites whiter and colors brighter, do you ladies believe all of that? Do you men believe all of that? And you rush right out and buy the brand new box of detergent because it's so much better? But you know, you recognize that there is some progress. Anybody want to try some lye soap on their clothes and a rock to beat it with? And you don't even want to know what the laundry's used in the New Testament world. My wife's sitting there laughing. She said, don't tell them, don't tell them, don't tell them. Okay, I won't. And one sacrifice of Jesus is better than all of that. We're out of time. Thank you.